So Advent, what is Advent? And I didn't grow up in a liturgical church that follows a liturgical calendar, so I didn't know what Advent was until I started doing some of my schooling and learning some of the different calendars and traditions over the years. And Advent is actually, Happy New Year, everybody. Advent is the start of a brand new church year, church liturgical cycle. We have completed ordinary time last week with Christ the King Sunday, and we start a brand new year. It's cyclical, so you can see there, that purple, I got a big old arrow on there so you can kind of say, you are here. Ever been in the mall? Do they even have malls anymore? I don't know. And they're like, you are here, the big map, and says, this is where you are. Well, there where we are. We have started a brand new church liturgical cycle year. And the next half of the year, all the way until June, is the Lord's time, where we kind of look at the story of Christ. And we follow certain readings that are in something called the liturgical calendar. And we do this every year. There's 3 different cycles, so it's not the same thing every year, but there's year A, B, and C. And I can never remember which year we're on. But there's different readings for each one, but the same seasons. So we do Advent every year. And we'll have 3 years where we have different ones. So 3 years ago, we read this passage, and I did an online service because we were in like the depths of COVID and lots of online services happening. And so we were here about 3 years ago, and every 3 years we repeat the cycle again. But this is the brand new start of a liturgical year, and we start Advent. Now, Advent is not Christmas. Now, you might think that Christmas starts on November 1st. When Mariah Carey comes on the radio in all the stores and starts singing that song over and over again until we want to just like hit ourselves in the head over and over again. And I went to Costco like end of August, and they were starting to put some Christmas stuff out, and I thought, oh Lord, no, I am not ready for this. Right? We think Christmas starts November 1st and then kind of peaks with Black Friday when we buy all of our gifts. And then kind of fizzles and then ends on December 25th at like 12 like p.m. We're like, okay, I'm done. Trees out at the curb. Take all the decorations down. We are done with Christmas. I am done this year. But guess what? Christmas doesn't start until, for us, Christmas Eve. When we light the 5th candle, that starts. Everybody, you know that song, The 12 Days of Christmas? I'm thinking, why in the world would we have 12 days of Christmas with this person getting too many birds? If you are good at math, you could tell me how many birds that person's going to get by the end of the song, because they just repeat it. They get 2 turtle doves, I don't know, like some 10 times or something, 11 times. I can't remember. It's a lot of doves. They're going to have a lot of doves and geese and swans and is there ducks in there? I can't remember. I can't remember all the 12 days. But they get a lot of gifts throughout the 12 days of Christmas. Actually, the 12 days of Christmas starts on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. And it goes for 12 days, and that's the Christmas season. So if you remember Downton Abbey, when they were trying to take down the Christmas tree, and that lady said, the tree comes down at Epiphany, and not before. That is what they were talking about. They're following the 12 days of Christmas cycle that starts on Christmas. So Advent is the preparation for Christmas. It's not the Christmas season. We do the decorations, we have the lights, we'll sing a few of the songs, but Christmas starts on Christmas Eve, and it lasts for 12 days. And it's called Christmas Tide. Just like Easter it's not just that one Sunday, it's 8 weeks long. Easter is 8 weeks long on the calendar. So Christmas is 12 days long, so if you don't feel like taking down your Christmas tree, you know, you're just tired, and you're like, I'm just going to keep it up. You got 12 whole days. And here's a little pro tip, free information. You can take down the ornaments, leave the lights on, and then it's an Epiphany tree. Because Epiphany is the season of light. And there's lights on your tree, and nobody can stop you. They say, why is your Christmas tree still up? You say, no, it's an Epiphany tree. What are they going to say to that? So there's your pro tip. If you don't want to take down your Christmas tree until Lent, you're good to go. Because you got all Epiphany right there. Then we'll start Lent later in the season. That's how it goes. But Advent means the arrival of a notable person, thing, or event. Now, who are we preparing for the arrival of in Advent? Well, we're preparing for the birth of Christ. So this season of Advent is really old, and it used to be very much like the season of Lent. Back like 1,000 years ago when they're celebrating the Advent season, it was a time for people who wanted to become a part of the faith, part of the Christian faith. They would have to go through a season of fasting. Sounds fun, doesn't it? And then at Christmas time, you can become a part of the church. And the same was happened for Lent. Lent is not just don't eat meat, but it's a season of fasting that prepares you to join the church. So you couldn't just walk in the doors and say, I want to be a part of the church. They'd be like, all right, next time Lent comes around, we'll see if you got the stuff it takes to be here, kind of a thing. That's when the church had a little more cultural authority than it does now. So we don't do it that way anymore, but we still have the spiritual practices that help us during those times. So Advent is the season of preparation. Have you ever heard the phrase, are we there yet? Maybe you've heard the phrase, right? And I remember as a kid, I think kids understand Advent better than we do because they spend the entire month of December waiting for Christmas Day, don't they? Is it here yet? How many more days left? Can I open my presents yet? Do I get to see my presents yet? Is it here yet? Is it here yet? Like, they understand this anticipation, this preparing for Christmas. And there's all these different things that we do to prepare for Christmas. You know, we have parties, and we hang our lights, and we do all these things. Advent is this preparation time. It's a seasonal reminder that God's arrival in the world is a past reality, a present process, and a future promise. This is what Advent has to teach us every single year, and we have to remember this. I was reading through my message from 3 years ago, and I'm thinking, man, I could just read that word for word today because it still applies. Because Advent is this season. We never get tired of Christmas, right? Unless it's December 25th and we're all Christmased out. But when Christmas comes around, we're like, oh, it's time for Hallmark movies, right? It's like, it's time for cozy and put the lights up and get the tree out. And, you know, Christmas can feel really happy. Christmas can feel like, oh, it's here. I love it. And then you prepare for that. But then there's seasons of Christmas where it's like, I don't think I want to do Christmas this year. You know, I'm too tired. I've had too much loss this year. I've not experienced the joy of Christmas in a while. You know, it's different now that, you know, the kids are all grown up and moved away. Or, you know, it's different now that we don't have, you know, mom with us this year. Or there's all these different things. And Christmas can be really complicated time because there's joy in the midst of it. And then there's sadness in the midst of it. And there's all this nostalgia that gets wrapped up in it. And then here we are at church and we're trying to figure out, how do we do Christmas? Well, today we're doing Advent and we're doing preparation. And today's day is about hope. Because when we're preparing for something, hope is like we're waiting. Do you have what you hope for yet? Right? We don't have that yet, right? Because if we had it, we wouldn't be hoping. And so hope is this thing. It's like it's never yet here, but it's always something that keeps us moving and looking forward. Advent reminds us that yes, God has entered the world in the person of Christ back in 0 to 3 AD, historically. That happened. In this baby Jesus, born in a manger kind of a thing. That happened. That's great. And yes, there is this promise that Christ will return and set all things right. One day, all shall be well. All shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. It ain't happened yet, has it? Is all well yet? All is not well yet, right? So that we're hoping for that. But then, I'm sure that there are areas in your life that you just wish God would just show up and do something. Am I right? Like you're waiting for that direction. You're waiting for the wisdom. You're waiting for the something, the provision or the something. You're just waiting. It's got to come. And God's going to show up in this way. This is what Advent teaches us how to wait. It teaches us how to prepare, how to anticipate. Because I think we lose that, a little bit. When we're kids, we know how to do that well. We anticipate it's birthday party, it's coming up, or Christmas is on the way. And we do this this whole preparatory anticipation kind of a thing. And then when we grow up, we just kind of get impatient when things don't happen the way we want to, right? Well, kids can get that way too, but they know how to look forward and be excited about stuff. And we are just kind of impatient. Like, God, why didn't you fix this yet? God, why aren't you doing this yet? Why did this happen? Why? We don't understand. And instead of looking forward in hope, we just kind of say, why is it not yet? It should be we have this expectation that God should have moved 3 weeks ago and provided this stuff and made life easy for the moment. And I don't know about you, but that's not happened in my life very often. My life seems to be preparation for the coming of Christ. All the time. Not this future end of the world apocalyptic stuff, but these things. I never quite get at the life that I'm looking for. I don't know about you. Like, I have a vision in my head, oh, it would be great if everything lined up, and then I arrived at some kind of static existence where I don't need anything, and all is provided for, and it's all just kind of like boring. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's like, okay, there, and it never gets here. And then I take my happiness, I take my joy, I take my expectation, and I say, well, when this thing arrives, then I'll be happy. How many times have you done that? And are you happy now? Right? Like, it's almost like we don't think we deserve to be happy. So we keep punting the ball until the next thing. And we'll say, I'll be happy when that thing arrives. And then it's here, and it's like, well, that didn't work. But I'll be happy when the next thing arrives. And then it arrives. It's like, no, it still didn't work. And we have to get over this thing that says we're not really deserving to be happy and find happiness in the now that is here. And that's a part of learning how to be hopeful people. Learning how to be hopeful people is not living inside of a Hallmark movie. I like Hallmark movies. I don't know about you. They're so predictable. I love it. You know, it's like I need something that's maybe you don't. Maybe you're like Die Hard is my Christmas movie, and that's cool. You do your thing. You do you. You know. I like the Hallmark movies. I like the classics as well, but the Hallmark movies, like, they just kind of have this repetitive, I don't have to pay attention so much. It's just kind of calming and chill. But I don't know about you, but my life doesn't look like that at all. Maybe that's why I like them. But it doesn't look like that. And we think that hope is like living inside of this perfect Hallmark reality existence, and it's not that at all. Because if you had what you hope for, you don't need to hope anymore. And we are a people of hope, which means that we're going to constantly be hoping for something that's not yet here all the time, because we are a people of hope. And so we have to learn what hope is and how it's different from having the thing you hope for and what to do in the meantime. Because, as I said, Advent is a past thing. We're celebrating the birth of Christ. We're anticipating for that moment when Christ comes into the world back 2,000 years ago. And we're also looking forward to the time when all things are set right. We're looking forward to that. But there are small ways that God needs to show up in our lives now. And we need to learn that our happiness is not dependent upon the things showing up, but about traveling the path you're actually on and learning how to be happy in this day, in this moment, no matter what it looks like. Because happiness is not based on your circumstances. Happiness is based on your expectations. If you have an expectation that life should be easy, that this should just be a cakewalk, and that God should provide everything you need 3 minutes before you need it, then you're never going to be happy. I don't know about you, but my life never works that way. And if I'm constantly expecting that to be like that, I'm never going to learn to be happy. So we have to learn to have proper hope. And that's what the first Sunday of Advent is all about. Learning how to hope. Learning what it is to be a people of hope. And to be happy in the hope that is coming and not yet here yet. So we have to learn how to do this thing called hope, because it's really hard. There's 5 Sundays in the Advent season, or five services. We have the prophet's candle of hope, and we kind of go through all those prophets talking about, you know, the Messiah will come and he will show up and it'll look like this. Then we have the shepherd's candle of peace. We have the Mary candle of joy, which is the pink one. Mary gets the pink one because joy is pink and glorious. And angel's candle of love is 4th. And then on Christmas Eve service, we light the center one, the Christ candle, which is salvation or redemption. And that's how these work. Progressive, we learn about what it means to hope, what it means to have peace, what it means to have joy, what it means to love, and what it means for redemption to show up in your lives. Like, I think I need this every year anyways. Like, these things I have to learn how to do every single year, because it seems like these things change up on me and I have to relearn things every year. But these 5 candles help us practice the virtues of anticipation properly without falling off one side into optimism that denies reality, or the other side of pessimism that denies hope altogether. I don't know about you, but I walk that tightrope sometimes. I get real optimistic, like everything's going to work out exactly as I want it to. Now, I'm redoing my in-laws' bathroom. We're like gutting the thing down to the studs and redoing it and all that stuff. I'm currently doing that. I'm leaving here to go and put down OSB flooring in there. And I don't know about you, but every time I take on a project, I'm like, yeah, 2 days. I got this, man. I'm going to go in there, day one, rip everything out. Not going to find any surprises. Yeah, you laughed. Because you know what that means. You're not going to find any surprises. You're just going to then lay down everything. It's going to be all square and plumb and everything's easy. And then 2 days, I'm out of there. Well, that's not how it's going. That is not how it's working. I have that optimism. Then I can slip over into the pessimistic side and be like, this is never going to get done. I'm never going to finish this thing. It's never going to happen. You see how none of those things are real? Optimism and pessimism are not real. They're like have this whole oh, everything's going to be like golden, rosy, and wonderful, and then it's not, and then we fall off the cliff on the other side and be like, everything's just falling to crap. What are we going to do about this? Optimism and pessimism are not hope. You can be an optimistic person. There's nothing wrong with being optimistic. You can even be a pessimistic person. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's not hope. Don't confuse them for hope. You don't have, if you're a pessimistic, skeptical person, you don't have to think that you have to be an optimistic person in order to have hope, because that's not hope at all. Hope is not optimism. Optimism is hoping everything works out rosy and cool and nothing's going to happen. That's going to be, nope, that's not how it works. Hope is something entirely different, and that's what we're learning about today. So, we start at the end. You notice the reading today was a little bit weird for Christmas? Like the sun and the moon will go dark, it's the end of the world, and all this stuff. Like, well, Merry Christmas. What the heck kind of reading is this on December? Yes, we start at the end. And it's very common for the liturgical calendar to introduce during Advent an apocalyptic reading. Now, when we think apocalyptic, there's like a genre of movies or books that we go to that kind of looks like this, right? Like apocalypse, yikes. Is that an apocalypse? That looks like an apocalypse to me. Apocalyptic actually is not this. This is not what we're talking about when we talk about apocalyptic scriptures. Apocalypse means an unveiling or a revealing. That's all it means. An apocalypse is an unveiling or a revealing. So if you ever lift up a rug that you haven't lifted up in a long time, and you're like, whoa, I did not know that was under there. Anybody ever done that? You had an apocalypse moment right there. You unveiled the floor under the rug, and then you saw what was there that you didn't see before. So in the Bible, there's apocalyptic genres that are not dystopian. They're just more of a revealing of what's behind human activity and the powers that be and the governments and the religions and all this stuff, like the way we organize ourselves into arrangements. Whenever you get a peek behind the veil of what a person's actually like, when they're it's like the Wizard of Oz, don't look behind the curtain. That was an apocalypse when they found out the wizard was just a regular guy from Kansas or something. That was an apocalypse. You're like, oh, he wasn't what I thought he was. That was an apocalypse. Whenever you get a peek behind the veil of how things work and who's running the things and how it actually is when you thought it was one way, that's an apocalypse. And Jesus is giving these apocalyptic readings in this passage where he's like, there will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the earth will distress among the nations, confused by the roaring of the sea and of the waves and blah, blah, blah. All this stuff is sounds scary, whoa, what's about to happen? He's using a specific type of writing or poetry, if you will, that involves these big, huge pictures called apocalyptic pictures to say, I'm trying to show you what's behind the veil of this Roman government and of this Jewish temple system. And he's saying, as we learned last week, the temple system is going to be destroyed. And when the temple system is destroyed, that is the hub of your culture, it's the hub of your economy, it's the hub of your religion, it's the hub of everything. You as a people, that is your hub. Everyone travels there once a year. And it's that's going to be destroyed really soon. And so Jesus is just letting him know that. So if the center of your world is removed, I don't know if you've ever experienced that, a tragedy hits your world, something that your life orbited around, all of a sudden is gone. Maybe it was a job or a person or a relationship that you have, and it's gone. You feel I was orbiting around this thing and now I'm just shot into space. So where do I go? How do I do this? I don't know what, feels like my world has ended. You've experienced an apocalypse. When the center of your world is removed and you have to find a new orbiting thing, a new way of being in the world. That's what Jesus is saying here with this moment. He's saying, Your life is built on this current arrangement. That current arrangement is going to come to an end. And when it does, I want to prepare you for what's on the other side so that you can quickly come around a new sense of orbit. Now, like historically, what he's telling the Jewish people is your arrangement that you have agreed to orbits around you maintaining this balance between the Roman government and the religious structure that you have. And it's very fragile, and one day that's going to break, and the temple will be destroyed by the Roman government coming down with their armies and wiping it clear. That will be the end of your world. And you will have to then find a new way to be and rotate. I want you to form small communities around tables. That's why we do communion. This took the place of the old thing. This is God's new covenant, sealed by the shedding of Christ's blood. He's showing us this, like, gather around these tables of love and inclusion. And he's like, just go to the cities. You don't have to have a whole big, huge, monstrous system like the temple again. You just need small communities that want to work for God's justice and peace in their little neighborhoods. And just gather around a table and sing some songs and break some bread and love one another and provide for each other. That's your new thing. And the temple was destroyed, their world came to an end, and they did gather around tables. The book of Acts is that story. If you ever want to go and read that, that's kind of the context of that one. It's like Luke part 2. So that is where Jesus is kind of leading. So if our life is built on a current arrangement, and then that current arrangement is built on anything contrary to God's kingdom, when God's kingdom arrives, ours will be disrupted. This is kind of like a logic statement that is put together. If your current arrangement is built on anything that is contrary to God's kingdom, when God's kingdom arrives, what's going to happen to the thing? Now, all of our lives are built around something that is contrary to God's kingdom, because God's kingdom is perfect, and it's not here. And so when peace comes in, what happens to the things that were providing conflict? Well, that goes away now. What if you were benefiting from the thing that provided conflict? I got to find a new thing to do. I got to find a new way to be, right? So anything that, this is why Jesus is giving this end of the world talk, because the Jewish temple system, as it had developed in that day, was very abusive to the poor and the needy, and to women and children and Gentiles, people who weren't Jewish. It was very exclusive and abusive. And so when God's kingdom of peace and justice arrives to something that's abusive and exclusive, what happens to that thing, right? Like, when justice arrives, it kind of is like, oh, we're done. This is gone. So when God's justice arrived, instead of saying, well, let's rebuild our lives around God's justice, what they did instead was say, let's just kill God. That's what the crucifixion of Christ was. Them saying no to God's justice arriving and saying, well, maybe if we just get rid of this guy, then all of a sudden, we can keep our current arrangement that we love. And so this is kind of like Christ's birth, life, crucifixion, death, and resurrection redefine power through love, not domination. Because Christ willingly goes through this process. He goes through the whole, he lives a human life, dies a human death, is buried. But because he did it with perfect love for our benefit, he defeats death and comes out the other side resurrected. So when spring is near, right? I can't wait for spring. As soon as Christmas is done, I'm putting a spring countdown on my phone. Because I am done with snow already. I don't know about you, but some of you go to Florida and you're not going to be able to make it this year. But I love when my crab apple tree looks like that. That's when I know that, okay, now we're good. Now it's not going to snow again. And you cross everything when you say it, right? Because it's Michigan, you never know. So, if our life is oppressed by the current arrangement, because the current arrangement is built on things contrary to God's kingdom, when God's kingdom arrives, we experience invitation. So part of us lives in the other one, and part of us lives in this one. Because the current arrangements that we build historically, of all time, of all peoples, of all cultures, are exclusive and for people at the top. That's just how it works. That's how we tend to build our structures. And then it becomes very exclusive. Guess what? If you're oppressed by that thing, when God's kingdom arrives, then you experience redemption. If you're experiencing oppression and God's kingdom arrives, you experience freedom. So these arrangements that we kind of build our lives around, we need to learn what it is to hope. Because we can't just bring God's kingdom into this world and have it be all done. Like, we're trying our best. We're doing what we can in the small ways that we can. And we need these practices of hope. We need the season of Advent to teach us how to hope. Teach us what it means to hope. These rhythms of anticipation are hope and peace and joy and love. And then that arrival of the thing that we hope for. Because there are small arrivals of God's kingdom that are glorious, aren't they? Like when God shows up in the way that you really needed God to show up, that's great. It happens. But then sometimes you experience disappointment, and that hope has to kick in. And that hope has to keep you moving. And I love my homeboy Thomas Merton. He was a Catholic monk in the 60s. He said this: I have learned that one cannot truly know hope unless he has found out how like despair hope is. Think about it. What's despair? I don't have a thing. And life sucks. Right? That's despair. What is hope? I don't have the thing. Because if I had it, I wouldn't be hoping, right? So hope and despair are like cousins almost, or like siblings. They're really close because you can't have the thing you hope for, or else you don't need the hope. So we have to learn how to hope so that we don't fall into despair. Because when we hope, we tend to look to the horizon from which we know the sun will rise. That's the attitude of the heart that Christmas teaches us. How to hope is not saying, I don't have the thing, life will never be the way I want it, I'm done. That's despair. Hope is saying, I don't have the thing, but I think I can learn to be here in this place and look from the direction from which I know the sun's going to rise and shed light onto this darkness. Knowing that the sun rises every day, right? We have this cyclical thing called the sunrise. We know that it happens every day. He went on to say this: hope stands upon the ground of reality, as dark and depressing as that might be, and yet turns its head towards the direction from where we know the light will come. It's the difference between hope and despair. It's not that hope has the thing it hopes for. No, despair and hope share that thing together. We don't have the thing we hope for. The difference is the person that has hope knows the character of God is good, and knows that the character of God wishes to provide in this loving manner, in some mysterious way. And we turn our eyes towards the direction from which we know the light will come. And if we can learn how to be a people of hope and not despair, doesn't mean that you'll never despair, never have emotions of like, oh man, this is never going to work out. But we know how to have a spiritual practice of hope. Hope is not an emotion. It's a thing that we have to practice and learn how to do, because despair is that emotion of not having those wings, not having those things come in and kind of convince us that God is good. Because sometimes life's trying to convince us that God is not good. Because, stuff happens. I don't know if that's happened in your life before, but it's happened in my life. And we can easily experience the emotions of despair and be brought under the waters of depression and darkness and despair and just saying, never, ever, ever will life be good again. But hope is not an emotion. Hope meets us in those dark waters. And hope tells us, here's the things that you do. Here is the spiritual practice. Here is the discipline that helps you tread water until your toes hit the sand. Hope is that practice of saying, I know the light will come from this direction and I will keep looking for that over there. That's what Advent teaches us how to do. How to be a person of hope. Not optimism, not pessimism, not drowning in despair, but hope comes and meets us on the ground of reality. Whatever your life looks like today, hope can meet you in the midst of it. Hope can find you wherever you are, and you can practice that hope and look towards where you know the light will come and say, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Because there's a force of love moving through the universe that holds us fast and will never let us go. That's the prayer of hope, of Christian hope. Our closing poem is not a psalm by Malcolm Guite, but an Advent poem from Malcolm Guite. The word Emmanuel is God is with us. It's the name of God that means God is with us. And there is a common hymn called O Come, Emmanuel, that is all this hoping that God will arrive into our lives and make life the way that we need it to be. That it's a song of hope. And it's also a song of not having the hope just yet. And this poem kind of captures that. It says, O come, and be our God with us. O long-sought witness for a world without. O secret seed, O hidden spring of light. Come to us, wisdom. Come, unspoken name. Come, root and key and king and holy flame. O quickened little wicks so tightly curled, be folded with us into time and place. Unfold for us the mystery of grace and make a womb of all this wounded world. O heart of heaven beating in the earth, O tiny hope within our hopelessness. Come to be born, to bear us to our birth, to touch a dying world with new made hands, and make these rags of time our swaddling bands. That was O Come, O Emmanuel by Malcolm Guite. Amen.
Please sing the story.